Welcome back to the channel, folks. This is Jason, host of Fighting Words Financial, and today I wanted to come at you with another quick video on BYD. This is the company that's really not getting a lot of super positive coverage, and I'm not here to give you super positive coverage. I'm here to point out some sort of technical advantages that they have right now that are really going to help them increase their market share in the EV market in the near future, and a lot of it has to do with supply constraints. If you sleep on BYD, you're really doing it at your own peril as an investor, and you're really not considering how much of the market share they're going to be able to take from the other companies that might be, your favorites in your portfolio, like NIO, Xpeng, and even some favorites like VW or, it doesn't matter. Whoever's producing vehicles in China, BYD is a player in that space, and they actually have huge sales right now. So you might have some biases about this company that are related to the lack of media coverage here in the US, or simply by what shows up in your YouTube algorithm. What shows up in your YouTube algorithm is biased on purpose. They're feeding you exactly what you want to hear, not necessarily what you need to hear about being a responsible investor. So I want you guys to take a look. I'm gonna put up this article in editing here. Auto suppliers like VW, Bosch, and Continental are starting to warn of semiconductor bottlenecks, meaning they're running into trouble acquiring the parts that they need to produce electric vehicles and even internal combustion engines because they can't find the semiconductor parts they need. This in part means the IGBTs, which is the insulated gate bipolar transistors. We covered this in my last video on BYD. BYD is the only car company that also makes their own semiconductor components. In fact, they're the only auto producer that produces both their own batteries and the IGBTs. We went over their batteries before. That's another one where they kind of solve the problem of supply constraints. The battery that they produce, and they have produced 1.5 gigawatts of batteries this year. They are the fourth or fifth largest battery maker in the entire world right now. But the battery they produce, called the Blade battery, is a lithium ferrophosphate battery. It has eliminated cobalt and nickel from their cathode chemistry, which means that they don't suffer any of these supply or ethical constraints around getting cobalt or nickel. So anyway, this gives them an opportunity to grab more market share, particularly for their BYD Han luxury EV. The sales for that vehicle have been growing pretty rapidly, and it stayed under the radar. This model alone has outsold everything that NIO has produced. It's outsold everything that Xpeng produced. And really, the Xpeng P7 competes directly against the Han. And this is really concerning for Xpeng. If they're having trouble acquiring the parts they need, the semiconductor parts they need to produce their vehicles, their production is going to start falling behind. But even so, BYD already sort of dominates that luxury sedan space in China apart from Tesla. In fact, the only car that outsold the BYD Han was the Tesla Model 3. It actually kind of flew under the radar, but in October alone, BYD sold 7,500 BYD Han vehicles, and supposedly they have another 40,000 orders or pre-orders. I don't know if that's really true, or I don't know what that even means, but that does tell me that there is interest in this vehicle, real interest in this vehicle. So VW, why this is really concerning for the market as a whole, is that VW is one of the largest car makers in all of China, and not just the world, and they have joint ventures with a number of really big players who are also telling us that they have a supply constraint when it comes to semiconductor parts. Now, these semiconductor producers have already stated that they are responding to that increased demand and that they are creating more volume, but it's going to take anywhere from 6 months to a year for that supply to catch up to demand, which means that BYD has this opportunity to create or to steal more market share with their luxury Han EV. And what's really important is VW has all these partnerships with these players in China, like SAIC Motor Company, the FAW Group, and most importantly, JAC. JAC also has that partnership production deal with NIO. So if VW is going to be facing bottlenecks when it comes to semiconductor parts here in the future, so is NIO if they're both acquiring them through their partnership production deals. So if VW is going to have trouble meeting demand for their vehicles because of supply constraints in semiconductors in China, so will NIO, since they both use the same sort of partnership production arrangement. I know this isn't a one-for-one comparison here, and we shouldn't assume that just because VW has supply constraints around semiconductors, we shouldn't assume that NIO has exactly the same concerns. But But it's not just VW that's complaining about this. There are auto suppliers around the world, or auto part suppliers around the world that are starting to complain about the semiconductor shortage. This is something that's going to affect every single company over the next 6 to 12 months, except for BYD, because they make all of their own semiconductors. Anyway, folks, that's just a quick update on BYD and some news that I think that's negative for the rest of the car industry, but maybe actually pretty positive for them. Anyway, those are my thoughts. You can tell me how wrong you think I am in the comments below. I look forward to seeing you next time.